Welcome to the next chapter of Mina Star, a near-future epic about humanity's reckoning after the collapse of the insane logic of mutually assured destruction, tracing how the ruins of the nation-state order give rise to the Charter, a new consensus-driven civilization built on the principle that every life is sovereign. In this chapter, we follow Lucien Vey, a haunted intelligence officer navigating betrayal and shifting alliances from the glittering spectacle of Tuvalu Day to the jungles of Southeast Asia, carrying the secrets that could unravel a conspiracy and ignite the end of the old world order. Tuvalu Embassy, Singapore. Tuvalu Day, 2044. Each team member was disappointed in their own way. They gathered to choose a mask among the choices of absurd sequins and feathers against black tie formality. Pramanasari had the best number and chose a vaguely bird-like mask. She tilted her head toward Camille. Chicken. Camille Dubois frowned disapprovingly. It is a phoenix. Adewale selected a monkey and said to Rafal Radecki, "Look, I'm you." The group roared in laughter with Rafal laughing the hardest as the rest of the team chose their masks. As the team wrapped up dressing, Lucien maintained surveillance on the door through which the Tuvaluan delegation would pass through on the way to their limousines. Daniel Carter cursed and said, "Boss, we have a problem. The kitty cage is in your suit." Lucien tamped down his first gut reaction that this was a betrayal. "Let's swap roles. We anticipated our plans would require adjustments. The delegation is behind schedule." Camille covered surveillance as Lucien slipped into his gear and Daniel showed him what to do. As the delay became prolonged, Daniel was the first to speak to keep the team sharp. "I've always wanted a dog but never stayed in one place long enough. Now I just imagine each team member as..." Daniel's eyes lingered on Camille. "Dobermans." She quirked a smile and threw a pillow at him. Adewale Ajayi, eager to share his news, said, "Just before mission dark, my wife texted that we were selected to be on the first wave of colonists to Venus." Lucien, in shock, blurted, "Going back to your roots as a Yoruba farmer?" Adewale grimaced and backhanded Lucien on the chest, with just enough force to cause him to exhale. "My family have been chocolatiers for 3 generations. And each of my daughters has been learning the family trade. We are bringing that to the new world." His face beamed with pride. Lucien gave him a hug and said, "I'm so happy for you and the girls." After the team all shared their congratulations, everyone sat quietly in expectation for the delegation. Camille waited until the doors began to open to say, "Went is my father." Tuvalu Day was spelled out in a giant spectacle. A dense swarm of tiny drones formed pinpricks of light that turned the night sky into Tuvalu rising from the ocean as Helena Strasser opened Tuvalu Day. 10 years ago, the Mirov family invested and designed permanence. The caissons, 40 feet tall, reclaimed Tuvalu from the sea, caisson by caisson, for 5 years to form the foundation of a new Tuvalu. The drones transformed to show the power of Mirov enterprises to create land from the sea, and Helena Strasser stood with a giant diamond held above her head. Each segment was cast in chloride-resistant geopolymer concrete, reinforced not with steel, but with basalt fiber tendons. The platform was designed to absorb the powerful Pacific swells. The platform's edge was covered in sand to form a beach that reminded people of the Tuvalu of their memories. Applause rippled as the drones echoed Helena's words. Behind her sat Julia van der Velde, the only other publicly known board member outside of the Mirovs, accompanied by a poised Asian woman Lucien had never seen before. Lucien allowed himself half a moment to reminisce of his time with Julia before catching a Green Company operative staring at him. Lucien thought, "If they are here, then their drones will be as well." In the 3rd year after commissioning, A Tuvaluan couple waded deep from the platform's edge towards the reef, seeded to form a wave break, and threw into the ocean a stone of green quartz from a mountain in Japan, the place where their son had died, while dreaming of their future home. They remembered their son, but they also honored their people's recent struggle and the stories of their ancestors. And so, we too remember. Helena dropped a yellow diamond into a water column. Silence held, then celebration erupted. The madness of Tuvalu Day had begun. The Capella Singapore glimmered from the shoreline like a jewel too bright for its setting. It was a spectacle handcrafted for Tuvalu Day, where sovereignty itself was staged for global broadcast. From a surveillance blind spot near a marble pillar, Lucien adjusted his snake mask, the sequined edge chafing his cheek, an irritation he couldn't shake. Lucien wondered, was Daniel's swap a setup? With his one good eye, he tracked a woman in a turtle mask, topped with a crown, the cat code named Arthur tucked in her arms as part of the costume. A sudden shriek cut the air. The crowd gasped as an orange streak shot across the marble. Glass shattered. Guests stumbled aside in panic. But Lucien wasn't surprised. Vellum had trained Arthur to follow an irresistible mix of catnip and vanilla. The cat purred as it brushed against his leg. Lucien crouched, slipped the cat into the concealed cage, and used a passing guest to merge seamlessly out of the blind spot into the glittering crowd. Having the cat in place, Lucien paused for a moment to spot the Green Company's lighter-than-air platform. It had active camouflage, but Lucien knew how to spot the telltale edge distortion. When he spotted the lighter-than-air platform, there were too many red flags, so he waited until the top of the hour. He scratched his nose and nudged his mask left as a signal to Adewale's drone that the exfiltration is off. He waited for Rafal to signal confirmation, but when his mask did not vibrate the confirmation signal, he keenly felt the familiar feeling of betrayal. He grimly told himself, "They are coming." Lucien closed the distance with the crowned turtle and brushed against Vellum, a subtle warning. He whispered, "Suwalki," their code to swim for the failsafe. Vellum nodded, and they split apart. Lucien fixed the escape route in his mind and drew slow, deliberate breaths. Then he heard a drone release a canister. He pressed a cloth to his mouth and nose and held his breath. Makar can be so uncreative, he thought, relieved it wasn't a nerve agent. The first plume hit. His eyes burned and sealed shut, tears spilling as fire filled his throat. People dropped, choking around him. Using a familiar song, Lucien bent low and moved by count and sound, every stride measured toward the Singapore Strait. Struggling to hold his breath, he told himself, almost there. He could hear the faint slap of water against wood and followed it, one hand extended until his palm struck the edge of the pier. That contact told him his position. Keeping low, he turned along the grain of the boards and ran by feel, one hand brushing the edge to stay oriented. By the fourth stanza of his rhythm song, he knew he was close to the deep end. A bullet struck his back shoulder but glanced off his thin body armor. More canisters burst behind him, thickening the air with pepper and sedatives. Half blind and gasping, Lucien reached the pier's end and leapt as bullets tore the surface. Ever since Madrid, Lucien had planned for layers of betrayal. His failsafe waited offshore. A chartered Rohingya crewed fishing vessel based out of Satun waited in the strait. He had recruited and trained Jasmine Eng as Vellum when she was still a first-year trainee. After whispering the code word to Jasmine, Lucien wasn't surprised that she survived. What did surprise him was her hand pulling him into the boat and her dry smile. "You've gotten old." He let himself smile back, rare and fleeting, before embracing her. Jasmine's face hardened. "Who betrayed us?" Lucien, eyes fixed on the islet, quietly but firmly said, An hour gone. The cabana will confirm if we have been betrayed. They watched as security dragged Freya, wearing Jasmine's turtle mask, out of the cabana confused and disheveled. As Freya struggled to free herself, a guard struck her hard in the abdomen. Jasmine's jaw clenched, fury in her eyes, but she remained silent. Lucien considered whether her cover had run too deep. Emotion was a liability. All staff stood at attention as the Asian woman Lucien had marked earlier strode forward, her fury cutting through the gala. She tore into the guard who froze under her authority, then steadied Freya with practiced composure. That's Chi Wei, Mikhail's proxy, and her father was the one who declared Taiwan independent. They knew about Valence 9, so their EIC mole is well placed. As Jasmine exhaled deeply, Lucien considered who the mole could be. Jasmine scanned the crowd. Any signs of my rescue team? Lucien shook his head. No signs, but we will find the traitor. He lowered his voice and told Rahman, the Rohingya skipper, take us north. Bantam Malangtai. Satun. Lucien sensed drones observing the boat, but he needed definitive proof of who betrayed him. By dawn, they were miles beyond Singapore's territorial line, the city's glow shrinking behind them as the fishing boat's engine droned north. Several days later, the morning mist hung low over a canal, softening the outlines of fishing boats moored along the wooden piers. Their hulls creaked against the tide, a slow rhythm in the silence. The air was heavy with the brackish scent of the mangroves. Salt mingled with the damp sweetness of decaying leaves. A faint tannic sharpness carried up from the roots clawing into the mud. Lucien and Jasmine sat on opposite ends of the boat, warily listening for the telltale sign of a drone. Who was it? Jasmine asked, scanning the dark. Lucien grimaced. It had to be Camille, Daniel, or Adewale. We were under comms blackout, and only those three had the ability to tip off Meroff without a trace. As the boat drifted closer, the pier emerged from the haze plank by plank, lantern posts standing like sentinels in the pale light. The stillness was so complete that even the ripples seemed hushed, the morning unfolding as though the world itself had just woken. Out of the mangrove thickets, a brilliant turquoise and white kingfisher landed and looked at Jasmine, then cawed. Kick, kick, kick. Jasmine leaned against the gunwale of the fishing boat, scratching Minu's ears. Doesn't Kalina make more sense? Cat and spy and all that? Lucien chuckled. That's what you focus on? Not who betrayed the world? Jasmine stood up and soberly said, the list of people involved touches everyone you and I know, but people just think Mikhail is seeking justice or retribution. But his vision is bigger. What I've gathered is a list of targets and how many delivery systems there are. Lucien listened patiently. Schematics? Jasmine turned and gripped the gunwale so hard that Lucien could hear it creak. Jasmine steadied herself and said, no, but I know how the order will be transmitted. It will be from Arnhem Space Center. Lucien waited for Jasmine to continue, then eventually said, from the Arafura Arcology. Jasmine stared at the kingfisher, then grimly nodded. Mirov Enterprises' failed satellite internet startup that triggered the Kessler Cascade was just an excuse. As they donated billions to build a post-Kessler space infrastructure, they masked the kinetic bombardment delivery infrastructure within the error margin, and they are now ready to launch. Jasmine laid out the full plan to wipe out the world's strategic nuclear infrastructure in 3 waves, Lucien whispered as he processed the pattern. Taiwan, dollar devaluation, Kessler Cascade. Each was an engineered collapse that culminates in a final kinetic bombardment. Lucien's hardened self-control slipped as his face blanched. After absorbing the magnitude, Lucien laid out the plan. We will be taking a long, circuitous route ultimately to Dhaka. If Mirov suspected our current location, We would have been greeted with a drone-dropped welcoming package. So we will drive up through Thailand, cross over to Laos, sneak through Yunnan, then cut through northern Myanmar into Nagaland, and follow the Brahmaputra River into Dhaka. Jasmine, doubt in her eyes, asked, I get the smuggler's route to your old haunt to Dhaka, your old station, but we have 3 problems. You are persona non grata in China after the botched NSB joint operation. All paths cross through Akup Zeliang, who still hates you. And most importantly, where are we going to find food for Minu? Lucien smiled warily as the unusually warm orange tabby purred and rubbed against his calf. For the next 2 weeks, they were anyone they needed to be to mask their passage. One day, Australian beef exporters, Jasmine's every 3rd word a curse. The next day, Canadian missionaries handing out Bibles. Their transit papers showed a clean trail, entry at Mohan, a stop at Hornbill Valley, and onward to Myanmar. In reality, they walked across the Chinese border from Laos and straight into the first police station. Jasmine complained in both Cantonese and Mandarin of being robbed, loud enough for everyone to hear, invoking the names of mid-tier party members with just enough weight to unsettle, then sliding a discreet gift across the desk. Within an hour, the police chief handed them temporary travel documents, eager to be rid of troublesome foreigners. Lucien used bandages to cover his distinctive scars, but the gauze itched, rough against the skin above his cheekbone. And sunglasses hid the ruined eye. On a crowded Yunnan bus, it was the best cover he could manage. An injured foreigner instead of a recognizable man. Jasmine languished in the trapped heat of the bus interior with eyes half closed. She was uniquely able to rest, but also remain vigilant for extended periods of time. I was 7 when you rescued me from Liepaja. My parents had just died by a Russian bomb. One moment my family was exploring the beach, and the next I was an orphan war refugee. Out of all the people on that bloody beach, I've always wondered, why did you scoop me up? Lucien simply said, You would have died. The rest was cut off as the driver hit a rut hard enough to throw the chickens under the seats into a panic. Lucien's head snapped back against the window. The sunglasses lifted, and his bandages shifted to expose his skin for an instant. Lucien wondered to himself, was that intentional? He saw in the rearview mirror, the driver's eyes widened a fraction, then narrowed. Lucien pressed the gauze back into place with one gloved hand, his posture unchanged, and did not look up again. He knew the man would make a call as soon as the bus stopped. Beside him, Jasmine adjusted her shawl and complained in Mandarin to the old woman across the aisle. Her hand, hidden beneath the fold of fabric, tapped once against her knee. A practiced signal asking whether to kill. Lucien's hand closed over hers, stilling it, and discreetly shook his head. Her jaw tightened, eyes forward. She returned to her chatter, voice steady as if nothing had passed between them. With one moment of exposure, the danger was already moving faster than they could. The bus left them near a trail that wound down toward the border. At night, the jungle was alive with the scrape of cicadas and the chatter of monkeys in the canopy. They followed a shallow creek, water brushing their boots as the current drew them toward Myanmar. Mist clung low, and the air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and leaves. They slipped into practiced routines of drone dodging in the jungle. Jasmine whispered softly, "Is it the Yang Emperor?" Lucien grunted in affirmation. He has reincarnated several times over the past 3 decades, but his power is now swiftly on the rise as people of Yunnan cross the border to avoid the crushing tax burden to support the extravagance of Beijing retirees. Adewale helped train his drone forces, and years later, Daniel warned him of a Beijing assassination. A hornbill's cry echoed, harsh and mournful. Jasmine glanced up, one hand already on the leather strap of her slingshot braced to her arm as they both froze under cover. The jungle pressed close, branches like skeletal fingers overhead. Then they heard it, the faint, whirring hum, too steady to be insect wings. A quadcopter drone moved slowly above the canopy, its IR camera searching. Jasmine slid a steel ball into the pouch, pulled back smoothly without a sound. The drone above hovered at the end of its sweep, holding position just long enough for its camera gimbal to reset. She and Lucien had seen the pattern before, a brief hesitation before it shifted to the next arc. She waited for the stillness, then loosed. For a breath, the machine shuddered in place, then toppled into the canopy. The explosion tore through the night. Lucien met Jasmine's eyes. That drone had not been searching. It had been hunting to kill. The Irrawaddy spread wide under the moon, a shifting mirror of silver-black water. A blindfolded Jasmine and Lucien stumbled from a boat while being pushed and shoved to the bank. They waited on their knees with their hands bound as Akup Zeliang approached, wearing a shawl draped in red and black and a rifle across his shoulder. When the men removed their blindfolds, Jasmine said, "Nice to see you, Commander Akup. We haven't seen you since Kohima." The broadly muscular man, with an unusually bushy beard, carefully considered his words. "When you betrayed us?" His fighters ringed him, and behind them the elders of the village stood in silence, beads clinking faintly in the night breeze. Lucien froze. Once, he and Akup had stood side by side when an extremist party manipulated Delhi's Hindi first decrees to strip Nagas of citizenship, emboldened by the global indifference to the plight of the Rohingya. He remembered the raids, the papers torn, and the families dragged from their burning homes. He also remembered the order from Brussels that the European Union would not oppose Delhi. Trade mattered more than the border tribes. Jasmine and Lucien were pulled out days before the killings. It was a massacre that didn't even reach the back pages of the New York Times. "You swore," Akup said, his voice low, resonant in the stillness. "You swore when they called us migrants on our own land that you would stand with us. Praise Jesus that the Kachin Free State adheres to the Charter and opened their borders to us." Lucien's lips parted, but no words came as pain blossomed at the acrid memory. After the men unbound them, Jasmine stood, then stepped close to Akup, her eyes hard as a dangerous tension filled the crowd. "Don't put every grave on us. You saw us ignoring Brussels. We prepaid for 3 years of Green Company's services. We stretched every resource, and Lucien was made a pariah." Akup's jaw tightened in stubbornness. "The Green Company stayed, but you left." Jasmine, understanding the beats of the reconciliation ritual, took a gamble and lashed out, striking him across the cheek. The crack echoed across the water. The crowd murmured, uncertain if they were witnessing justice or sacrilege. After forcing Akup to decide whether to kill them or forgive them, Jasmine took slow, deliberate breaths. She knew there was no way back, but Akup did not flinch. Slowly and deliberately, he struck her, not holding back, bloodying her lip. The Nagas stiffened as Jasmine and Akup stared at each other for a long, taut heartbeat. Then Jasmine stepped closer, and Akup's hands rose, hesitated, then drew her into a fierce embrace. With the reconciliation ritual completed, anger, grief, and recognition tangled in the silence. Afterwards, an elder stepped forward holding a Bible, its cover worn with age, to formalize the reconciliation. He placed it between them. Jasmine and Akup set their hands upon it, and after a moment of silence, Lucien added his own. The elder said, "This is not for the ashes of the past, but for the road ahead. From this night, we are reconciled." Jasmine, Lucien, and Akup affirmed. Then Akup stepped back, his face returning to stone. "There is one truth left. Why are Mirov hunters chasing you?" Jasmine spoke carefully. Because we carry truths they fear. Akup's gaze narrowed. Their leader once pulled me from death, and I owe him my life. For that reason, hear me, I will not raise my rifle against him, but I will also not lie to shield you. What comes, comes. He leaned closer, his voice harshly firm. Do not mistake this oath for trust. Words are ash. Actions are as firm as the hills. Tonight, we leave to guide you into India and set you on the Brahmaputra. But that is my final act. We are even. Lucien nodded in assent, knowing with certainty who the betrayer was that pursued them. Lucien grimly thought to himself, I know who saved his life. Akup slung his rifle, his shadow stretching long in the moonlight. You will have 2 days' lead. After that, if the hunters close, your survival is in your own hands. Above them, the stars glittered cold and sharp. The stink of old durian clung to their skin, layered with sweat, old fish, and the sour bite of stale alcohol. An old Lucien trick. He swore a beggar's odor was the only disguise that never failed. No uniform, no forged papers, no story to remember. Just stench. Enough to erase them from sight as people averted their gaze. The city's pulse pressed in around them. Dhaka's streets steamed with bodies and exhaust, the rickshaw bells chiming above the drone of prayer loudspeakers. Jasmine kept her head bowed, her eyes flicking only when she had to. They moved like unremarkable ghosts swallowed by the city. The shanty town was worse. Corrugated tin roofs leaned against one another like broken teeth, alleys no wider than an arm's span dripping with laundry water. At its center lay a single concrete blockhouse, unpainted and plain. Lucien had built it years ago, off books when he was station chief. Hidden inside was a satellite phone with a direct line to Went. Waiting for a crowd to blend in with, he took Jasmine past the blockhouse door to a sagging hovel next door. Inside, hidden behind a rusted panel, was his safeguard, a pinhole lens drilled through to the safe house and sighted on a strip of thin plastered wood. Lucien quietly eased the panel free and leaned in. His jaw tightened when he saw Adewale sitting in the dim light with a rifle aimed at the door, waiting. Lucien exhaled through his nose with his expression hardening. He turned to Jasmine and mimed an opening gesture as he drew a hidden handgun. She understood, and her lips tightened in resolve. When another crowd passed the blockhouse door, she rattled it hard, then leapt aside. The shot came instantly. A crack split the air, and splinters burst from the wood. Lucien fired through the weakened patch without hesitation. The gunfire left the air ringing. Jasmine pushed through the shattered doorway, sweeping fast. Adewale was slumped, blood seeping through his shirt. She kicked the rifle away as Lucien stepped inside. Adewale managed a strained, knowing smile when he saw Lucien. "Lucien," he rasped. "Remember, this is how I found you in Madrid, bleeding out on the floor." Lucien looked at the man who had once saved him from a cruel fate, but now only saw a stranger. "You knew from the start." Lucien nodded. "It is what I would do. Send someone my target completely trusts. But why, Adewale?" Adewale coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Mirov brings justice. To Russia most of all, but to all the butchers who killed under the shield of nuclear terror." He gasped for breath. "Why would you stand against that?" Lucien's voice was quiet, almost weary. "Because of the innocent lives that vanish with the guilty. Children, farmers, women just trying to feed their families. That isn't justice. That's a drone strike on a wedding to kill a single terrorist." Adewale's chuckle rattled in his chest. "Innocent?" His gaze fixed on Lucien. "After everything we've seen, how can you still believe in innocence? We've watched villages burn, heard lies justify the slaughter. We can only go from bad to a little better." and Marov's way is a little better. Lucien didn't flinch. People everywhere are doing the best they can with the hand they've been dealt. Even the Russians. For a moment, silence pressed in. Lucien already knew the answer, but asked anyway. If I joined, what happens to Jasmine? Adewale's eyes shifted to her. She stood in the doorway, shoulders squared, the weight of the moment crushing her. The silence stretched, thick and dangerous. His eyes softened, just for a flicker. Lucien, make sure my family makes it to Venus. My girls, they deserve that much. Lucien considered him, long and grave. Then he nodded once. Adewale's smile faltered into something raw. The pain is too much. End it. For a long second, Lucien's finger rested still on the trigger. Then he squeezed. Adewale's smile slackened as if he were asleep. Lucien stood in the quiet aftermath, Jasmine's breath trembling in the doorway. The city roared outside, indifferent, as Lucien screamed. Author's note. This novel began as a response to two troubling global trends. The first is the growing comfort with nuclear appeasement. The second is the steady rise of global political violence. Through this story, I wanted to explore the dangers of both while offering a possible path forward through the idea of the Charter, a political framework built to redefine what a state can be. This book is the first in a planned 9-part series. The first trilogy begins in a near-future world grounded in realism and science, and its later volumes move beyond Earth to the cloud cities of Venus and the scavenger worlds of dead civilizations where technology has become indistinguishable from magic. The second trilogy carries these ideas into a fantasy realm which focus on ethics and society. The third trilogy unites both universes into one. The Charter and its principles form the through line of the entire series, expressed in its central creed. Every life is sovereign. If you have listened this far, thank you. Please consider liking or subscribing to help this story and its message reach more people.